Thank you for joining me. Today, we're going to talk about remote working and how to improve the employee's experience and the manager's managing of remote workers. Um, what what it really entails, there are issues around remote working. We're going to look at the relationships, trust, and then how to get started. So, remote issues uh, are really, they can either be local, or they can be global, and they can have consequences. So everyone looks at productivity, motivation, remote relationships, in around communication and conflict. They think of, okay, they can do quick onboarding. And while they acknowledge stress and pressures relating to remote working, they're still trying to find out what is happening, what is going on, how to manage it, and everything else. So, really, what is coming out of this pandemic is that any problems with people issues or with business are now being magnified tremendously. Um, and this is then causing these remote issues to be magnified. So instead of people just looking at productivity, they're saying, okay, well, everyone is more productive working from home. They're getting to do the job for longer hours, earlier in the morning into later in the evening. And really, what is happening is the whole thing of sending people or changing people's environment to working from home is causing everything to be flipped on its head. So remote relationships then becomes top of the pile. Communications, conflict, onboarding becomes more stressful, and bigger problems come out of onboarding because managers are looking at uh, trying to do more face-to-face time with people to keep them engaged, to keep them motivated, to keep on top of problems. And to some employees, this looks like micromanaging. Now, it's been reported in the likes of Forbes and other magazines that 71% of managers feel that there's a huge amount of uh, unproductive work being done in this face-to-face communication. Um, they now reckon it's going to cost something like $37 billion because people, while they're productive at the moment, are less motivated. The quality of work is suffering. So what is actually happening is there's this low level face-to-face communication, which, as I say, is really putting more stress on people. There's unnecessary meetings. The whole concept of work-life balance is now gone out the window because everyone's working from home. So delineating between the home and work is now becoming an issue. There's this loss of passive knowledge where you'd meet someone in the corridor, or maybe for a coffee or something like that. So that passive knowledge sharing is now a very, very big problem because not all communication is verbal. So body language, tones in voices, wanting to have a private conversation with someone, but because you're in a group and it's in group chat or on Zoom or whatever, uh, you don't get that, oh, can I have a word with you afterwards type of thing. And if others hear that, then they assume that they're out of the loop. So it then goes into a trust issue. As I say, there's overworking, and this adds to the stress. So trust issues, people do business and want to work with people they know, like, and trust. And trust runs both ways. So an employee has to have trust with their manager and vice versa. So a person's loyalty or an employee's loyalty is first to the manager, then to the co-workers, and then to the company or organization. So if there is a trust issue or if there is a dislike of the employer or the boss, then trust issues actually get magnified in remote working. So how do managers and employees deal with that? Well, one of the things is life's a journey. So who we travel with is more important, or is usually more important than our destination. If we don't like the person we're traveling with, we have a problem. We're not going to enjoy what we do, whether it be work or social, it doesn't matter. So to put it bluntly, a team is not a group of people that work together, which is what businesses are doing at the moment. They're saying, there's the job, go to it. They don't look at the integration of people. They don't look at how people are working together. So this thing of trust becomes a very, very big issue. And trust, as I said, comes from knowing and liking the people you work with. So what we do is we do a thing which is different in a lot of respects from psychometrics, but it has similarities. Those similarities are the personal traits of people. So by looking at the traits of each individual and then comparing them to anyone else in the group or who are proposing to come into the group, you're looking at the relationship between people. Who will influence you, or who will you influence? Who will you impact, or who will you challenge? So once you know all that, the group can then be managed in a much more efficient way. You also find out the motivational style of people, whether they're laid back, whether they've almost like got a motor built into them, and how they see themselves, if they're under stress or under continuous stress or imbalance. So it's a very unbiased system of looking at people together. So we use a very simple questionnaire, which is all emotional based. So it gives a person, or it takes from the person, their subconscious reading of the questions, and they give their feeling response rather than anything else. So as I say, we get the traits of the different people in the group, and the ideal way is to cover all the group, in a unit like this, where you have different people with different traits, but each trait, like a networker will actually connect very well with a brainstormer, who in turn will connect with a public relations person. But a brainstormer will actually challenge a researcher. So it'll put the researcher under pressure. And if there is no connectivity between a brainstormer and a researcher, in other words, if there's no public relations type person there, the researcher will react against and push back. And this is where you get conflict. If you have, everyone connected together like this, you can have conflict, but it's more supportive. It's a kind of more creative conflict where people are comfortable talking out against someone else, but it's not aggressive. So this is very, very important when you're building a balanced team. People work together. So if you have created a team, but it's not balanced, you will get people who will be on the peripheral, who will be outside the group and will feel isolated. And if their connection to the group leaves, then they will tend to leave themselves, or certainly become quieter and less productive. So we're giving a clear pathway to solutions of dealing with people, how they interact, how they conflict with other people, but then how to bridge the gap between people who are conflicting. So as I say, it's 2020 vision foresight. We're helping businesses know how people connect, how to bridge the gap between different people, as I say. And then if you bring someone else in, how they're going to fit into that group. Are there going to be more people of one type in the group, or is there going to be a nice mixture of different types of people? And those different types of people bring their own experiences, their own knowledge to the group, which influences their thought pattern. So you're getting how people think in different ways. So an organizer will think in a very structured manner where they'll do a job one step at a time. So you're looking for people like that, but you're also looking for people who can network, who can bring people in, who can show different ways of doing. So a brainstormer or a visualist will help with that. So we identify and compare everyone in the group. And then, as I say, if you bring in a new candidate, we can then say, this is how this person is going to fit into this group. And these are the people they'll connect with. And this is how the group will work together. So it gives an awful lot of information that hitherto would have taken months, sometimes even years, for people to actually get to know a group, and especially more so now with remote working, where people are brought in to do different projects, that they know the people, how they're going to connect before the project gets started, before the team gets put together. And therefore, a manager can manage much, much better and basically hit the ground running. So we're looking at creating that trust, showing the certainty of people and how they act together. And we give the assurance that this has been done for probably several hundred years. And I've been doing this and working with this system for the last 20 years with tremendous success, because it shows the interaction of people and how they get on.
This is so timely with, like what's happened with people having to work remotely, and it will, fracture some businesses because they've never thought about this concept of how to connect.
Yeah.
And that's so in a way, this is really, I think for a lot of businesses, they'll be struggling because they've got to bring people back together now as well.
Yeah.
And they'll realise they've got a bit of a mashup of people and situations. So it is very interesting. That was useful. I've got to cry up. Yeah, go on.
The other thing is that the other problems on the social side of remote working is there's been a reported 25% increase in domestic violence. So stress levels, home problems, everything is being magnified.
Yeah. Well, see, in some businesses, it's something I've used to talk about a lot, because I've been used to working remotely for years, and it's this sort of concept of out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
So does my boss know what I'm doing? Does he actually value what I'm doing remotely? And this knowledge sharing, as you called it, is so relevant, because people go, I'm not sharing the knowledge, so am I missing out on something? And there's no the isolation side of it. It's actually quite serious potentially.